Hello, hello. Welcome to a very special bonus episode of Uncanny Cold Cases. It is a case update where we can deep dive together into all of the brilliant questions and theories that you've been sending in on these amazing stories. Expect new leads, new evidence, and incredibly, given that some of these cases are centuries old, new witnesses. So, let us dive straight in, shall we? Because I'm Danny Robbins, and for the last time this series, this is Uncanny Cold Cases.
Secrets still remain.
Mamma mia, here we go again. What a series it has been, from creepy text messages to a poltergeist trying to solve its own murder. We've had DIY exorcisms, ghostly nuns, an alien kidnapping, scary clowns, Victorian folk devils, and a ship full of terrified sailors. You see, I didn't say seamen. We've had it all, or have we? Because as ever, we will be hearing both sides, Team Skeptic and Team Believer, and here they are. It is, for Team Skeptic, forensic psychologist Dr. Ciarán O'Keefe, and for Team Believer, writer and parapsychologist Evelyn Hollow. Ciarán, before we crack into these new leads, what's been your favourite case this series?
Well, I think people might be surprised that I don't say Borley Rectory, because even though that is one of my favourite cases, the cases we've worked on, it would probably be Betty and Barney's experience.
Oh, Betty and Barney Hill, the UFO case.
Yeah, absolutely. There's such detail in that case, and, really difficult for a skeptic to unpick a lot of that.
I know, it was one that really moved people. It's quite an emotional case, that one. Evelyn, scariest moment in this series?
Controversially, I'm going to say Sandown Clown. Because if it's not supernatural, then there was a real person dressed as a big clown robot thing hanging out in the Isle of Wight, taking children to a random hut to talk to them, which is way scarier than anything I can come up with.
Such a strange, creepy one. All right, well, look, there is loads to talk about. And also, we will have some news later on this episode about a brand new series of Uncanny and Uncanny Summer Specials. Exciting times. But this series of cold cases kicked off with one of the most infamous poltergeist hauntings in British history, sometimes called the world's most violent poltergeist, the Black Monk of Pontefract, at that fateful address, 30 East Drive up in Yorkshire. Let's just remind ourselves of how scary this one was. Evelyn, this is often referred to as the most violent poltergeist case in British history. Do you think the Pritchard family were actually in danger?
Yeah, they're absolutely in danger, because they're either in danger from an unseen supernatural force, or they're in danger from another person in the house, perhaps one of their own family members or neighbours, or they're in danger from themselves. I think regardless of what you believe this case is caused by, we've escalated to the point now of threat to life. And so it doesn't matter if it's supernatural or not, these people are in absolute danger.
And we've had loads of thoughts and theories on this one, haven't we? Ian White from Paynton in Devon emailed to say, wow, this really is the strongest case I've ever heard of. Paul, meanwhile, on the YouTube comments was saying, I'm a believer, but I'm skeptical about this one. How do we know the family didn't make the whole thing up? People really torn about this. And the most dramatic moment, Evelyn, was when Diane, the teenage daughter of the Pritchard family, is dragged upstairs, seemingly. She's got those marks on her neck as if she's been strangled. Such a frightening idea, the idea of a paranormal entity having a physical impact on a person. But you've got a skeptical theory on this from a listener, haven't you?
I do. So this comes from a listener called Fiona Cousland, and Fiona says, in the 80s, I was in the Lincolnshire Police Force assisting the custody sergeant to restrain a prisoner. It wasn't until the prisoner was calm that I noticed that in all the kerfuffle, the duty sergeant had a strong grip around my wrist, thinking it was the prisoner's. So you can see that in the heated moment, things like this do happen.
Brilliant thing. So this is the idea that those marks on Diane's neck could have been from a family member trying to help her in that moment. Ciarán, this kind of strays into thoughts that you had when we were talking about the case. But if it is a mark from a family member, what are they helping her from? What is dragging her up those stairs?
Well, I think I can equate that experience with, some of the cases of demonic possession that I've witnessed, where you have individuals that are genuinely trying to restrain the person from the fact that they feel as though they're possessed. It doesn't necessarily mean that the people doing the restraining necessarily believe that something paranormal is happening to them. And I think we've got to think about that in the same way we do think about Diane's experience.
I think we are all just reeling for a moment by the fact that you're saying that you've witnessed cases of demonic possession. This is a side to you we did not expect. Tell us some more, please.
Do you really want to know about?
Yes, you've got
Well, I can
Millions
tell-
of
I
people
can-
out
I
there
can-
who want
I
to
can
know, Ciarán.
Tell
Tell
you
us about it.
the most amazing experience that I had, which was in Rome. I was in Rome with my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time. We were on a
Whose wife was she, Ciarán?
We're creeping into too much information here, Ciarán. Also, when you begin this by saying an amazing experience, is this like when you say a really lovely moment and what you actually mean is genuinely bloody terrifying?
Yes, it is genuinely terrifying. But I was on holiday in Rome with my wife, and we'd just been to the Colosseum, and we were walking back to where we were staying, and every time we walked back we took a different route through a hidden kind of street kind of off the main street, and we were walking and saw a lovely little church and said, let's go in. We went in, and we could hear the oddest noises coming from the back of the church behind the altar, kind of off to the side.
What kind of noises?
And it was kind of groaning, some screaming noises, some shouting noises, just a kerfuffle is the best way of putting it. And there was a guy there that was putting out prayer books, and I started to talk to him, and I managed to convince him for me to go and witness what was going on. And I witnessed very briefly, just for about 5 minutes, an exorcism.
What was that like to see?
When I was in there, I felt a chill. And I felt a chill because it was the first time that I had seen a demonic possession. And even with all of my skeptical perspective, here was somebody breathing on this table and the priest there going through the ritual Romanum and the exorcism ritual. And it's that moment of thinking, this person feels they are possessed by a demon. And what if? And it's that kind of, that chill, that moment, the kind of the blood runs from your face where you just go, wow, this is quite a moment. And for a moment, it was genuinely terrifying. And then I slipped into, I'm going to be a scientist and observe this, before I was ushered out and told I had to leave.
Wow, amazing. Crucially, how did the rest of that holiday go after you cut short your romantic walk to go for an exorcism?
We never talked about it for the rest of the holiday. She didn't want to know what I saw.
Your commitment to the cause is remarkable. Look, lots of people commenting on this Black Monk of Pontefract episode, asking why the family stayed in that house for so long. Bloke in a bathtub says, what I really don't understand, you say Jean lived in that house until 2001. If my daughter had been accosted by an unseen force, I would have taken my whole family out of there immediately. It's a good point. I think I probably would have too. But Flossie, 1985, had an interesting counter to that, saying it was a council house, so being rehoused wouldn't have been that easy. You can only flee from somewhere if you've got another place to go. It's so true, Evelyn. This chimes with things you were talking about on the South Shields Poltergeist episode. When you've got a family living in terror, why don't they move? It's not always that easy.
No, moving house is one of the most stressful things you can do. It's also very expensive. Your credit might be bad. You might not have the money to move. If you've got kids, they could be enrolled in schools there. You've got family there. But also, people don't want to admit that their house is haunted. In case of this family, they were in a council house scheme, so they can't just move. The council have to move them. They had just been moved to East Drive. So it's unlikely that even if they went to the council and begged to be moved, they would do it. And what are they supposed to say? Oh, our house is haunted. It's not as simple as just putting in your notice and moving somewhere else.
Also, interestingly, the reason they stayed was because the phenomena stopped. You know, Jean lived there till 2001, but the phenomena wasn't still going on. Got an interesting email here from Corin Mackenzie, who was trying to make sense of that rhythmic banging that we heard in 30 East Drive. It was described as drumming, if you remember. It plagued the family, and Corin was wondering if there was a historical connection to this, saying, it seems Pontefract was a strategic royalist stronghold during the English Civil War, and there are still road names in the area like Cromwell Crescent and Oliver's Mount, so perhaps some of the soldiers were camped here. Really interesting, wondering if that drumming sound was literally that, a military rhythm somehow playing again as an echo of the past. Quite a thought, Ciarán.
It is quite a thought, and I think it's great, some great investigative work there to try and find out, what could be causing that particular sound. It is a paranormal theory, let's be honest, so I'm not a supporter of it, but I love the investigative work that's gone into it.
But of course, the most interesting theory for this drumming came from you yourself. Do you remember what you said?
Is this about the mind?
It is about the mind. Let's just remind ourselves on this theory. Can you imagine how frightening that would be to hear that reverberating around your house?
So normally in poltergeist cases, noises are something we talk about at the beginning. And it usually starts with sort of tappings and scratchings, things that might be misinterpreted as mice or insects. And then it seems to ramp up. Now, normally we would look for explanations such as the building settling, the heating coming on and off, pipes expanding and contracting. But this is rhythmic, and it's happening again and again and again. And we can't seem to find any natural environmental explanation for it. Now, sound doesn't come from nowhere. Something has to be causing it. So unless the mice have decided to start a thrash metal band, something has to be causing the drumming.
I love it. And of course, we want your best suggestions on what we should call that mice heavy metal band. Guns and Rodents, perhaps. Ciarán, it was such a case, this one. We've had loads of theories on it. I know you've selected your favourite skeptic theory of them all.
Yes, I've got a theory here from Peter Lawrence, who says, "Hi, Danny. Apologies if you think this is a bit bonkers. I'm an archaeologist with a great interest in folklore and the supernatural and enjoy mad ideas. Pontefract is well known for making sweets called Pontefract cakes, and the main ingredient is licorice. There were a large number of Pontefract cake manufacturers up to the mid-20th century. There are still some now, and the town was surrounded by licorice fields. Now, licorice contains glycyrrhizin, which, amongst other things, can cause hallucinations. Pontefract seems to have more than its fair share of hauntings. Perhaps this is why."
Oh my goodness me, some people watching and listening will have had a Pontefract cake, these little licorice sweets. I looked this up now, and apparently in 2004, healthcare professionals warned against overindulgence in Pontefract cakes. A 56-year-old woman was admitted to hospital following an overdose of Pontefract cakes. Ciarán, you were blaming mouldy popcorn for causing hallucinations in our last Uncanny series. Could Peter have cracked the case here?
Well, all credit to Peter for bringing in a food explanation and a food skeptical explanation. I love that idea. The thing we've got to be careful of is, what does this particular food ingredient cause? And we know that it causes kind of a reduction in blood potassium levels, and that can result in an issue with your kind of body balance, but also have an effect on some aspects of your nervous system. So we know it affects those. Does it then result in a hallucination? I think there would have to be a particular level of intake of licorice to be able to cause that hallucination. And I think probably we would have heard about it from the family in some way, that there would have been a huge amount of intake of licorice to cause these hallucinations.
Well, I love it, though. This is one of the most magical things, I think, about the Uncanny Community. All these amazing theories coming in, people deep diving into these cases.
Secrets still remain.
From 1960s Pontefract, let's head to Victorian London and that really creepy story, Spring-Heeled Jack. This was case 7 of the series, and it really seemed to grab your imaginations, setting my inbox on fire, which is, of course, exactly what Jack did. Remember those descriptions of this tall figure with claws for hands, breathing fire from a twisted, cruel mouth. And weirdest of all, dressed in something that sounded a lot like lycra. He seemed so fantastical, like a supervillain. So imagine how blown away we were by how many people who got in touch to say that they themselves believed that they'd had an encounter with Spring-Heeled Jack or something very like him. Evelyn, this was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so we've got quite a few people who've had different sightings, or people they know have seen things. One of them is a man called Robert, and he has told us that his grandmother saw Spring-Heeled Jack in Liverpool in 1904. Another person called Anna emailed to say that her grandmother had had an encounter too, also in Liverpool, but this time it was in the 1930s. Paul's granddad believed he saw Spring-Heeled Jack in Warrington during the Second World War, and Edward sent us a story about an encounter in Leicester in 1929. His uncle was so affected by what he saw that he had to be sedated by a doctor.
Wow.
And it goes on and on and on. We've got Helen, who's told us about a series of sightings in Halifax in the 1930s, and Jed knows of a sighting in Shropshire as late as 1977.
77? Wow, there's such a spread of time there, Ciarán.
It is, and you could argue, does it make it more evidential? But people have been seeing ghosts in their thousands, and here we've got the Spring-Heeled Jack being seen by multiple people. It doesn't necessarily make it more evidential, but it makes it interesting.
Such a specific thing to describe, though, this figure, isn't it? And you know, we've got a really interesting one here. I promised you a new witness. I've got one. You thought 1977 was a recent sighting. I have got somebody for you who believes that they saw Spring-Heeled Jack in 1997. Her name is Michelle, and I spoke to her earlier. Listen to this. Tell me about what you saw.
So I was going down on behalf of a national newspaper to report on Lady Di's funeral, and we were told we had to be there at about 5 o'clock, 5:30. And it was dark, obviously, and my boyfriend accompanied me, which is very nice of him. So we walked from where we were living, which is probably about 40 minutes away, and as we approached Hyde Park, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this man leaping from wall to wall, and it was just the weirdest thing I've ever seen, because he looked like he was literally on a trampoline or something. I mean, nowadays I'd say he was like a Marvel character. The way he moved, he just went boing, boing, from one wall to the other.
So what kind of gaps are we talking between the buildings here?
We're talking probably about, 10, 20 foot. But he was quite a clear image of a man, basically. But the way he was moving was supernatural. It was just very strange. And he had kind of black coattails sort of hanging.
Oh, wow. So we are talking about a Victorian style frock coat here.
Yeah. In fact, Danny, I hate to say it, but his hair was a little bit like yours. It was quite floppy.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yes, it was, actually. He
was a sort of indie-styled three-heel jack, was he?
That's right.
Okay. This is a huge moment in our country's history, this moment of national mourning, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And it almost felt like whatever it was kind of, I like to use the word feast, but it seemed like he was feasting on the kind of grief and the kind of people's energy, and seemed very excited by that.
So you felt this was a reaction to what was going on those streets in that park down below where he was?
Yeah, I did. I felt like he was really excited about something. He was like, yes, but very sinister at the same time. Like he was really enjoying it, all the kind of heartache and the grief.
I'm going to say one word that everybody watching this or listening to this who is a skeptic will want me to ask about, but hallucination. Is it possible that you were imagining this?
I was awake, I was walking, I was quite kind of nervous about getting to the location that I needed to be so to do my job. I don't think I was at any point hallucinating, no, not at all. My mind was firmly on the job of getting to the park and reporting.
Has it changed the way that you feel about these things, about the idea of the paranormal?
Yeah, it's made me feel very uneasy. He's probably still out there.
Evelyn, amazing stuff. We love an eyewitness account on Uncanny. I have to say that Princess Diana and Spring-Heeled Jack was not on my Uncanny Cold Cases bingo card.
No, it's going to be some bingo card at this rate. It's a weird one, but also it's really interesting. It's much later than we would think. It's in the 90s. The lady is a correspondent for a newspaper. She's quite sensible. It was on an open public place on a street. It's not like it's the middle of the night and you're seeing shadows out of your eye. So who or what is it?
Ciarán, what do you make of it?
I think there could be a perfectly rational explanation here. And even though we're dealing with somebody that's a correspondent, a journalist who should know what they're looking at, remember this setting. It's Pall Mall. It's a huge public event. There are going to be police officers around, especially armed police officers and snipers. And some of these individuals, when they are moving into position, can appear to be very acrobatic. And they wear dark clothes and they wear dark masks. So who's to say that's not what she
Great
said?
theory. You think it's somebody from a police unit that breathes fire and has big claws?
Yeah, who knows?
Okay. Look, really interesting. I think that is a genuinely good theory. One other really interesting new lead on this case came in an email from Claire, and it takes us somewhere that we absolutely would not have expected to go for this case, Asia. Claire says, I've just been listening to the Uncanny episode on Spring-Heeled Jack, and it immediately triggered a bizarre, terrifying memory from my time living and working in rural Sri Lanka in 2011. It was known as the Grease Devil crisis. Historically, a grease robber was just a thief who lubed up to evade capture. But in the summer of 2011, amidst a wave of local anxieties just 2 years after the Civil War ended, the myth mutated into something straight out of Uncanny. Suddenly, villagers were being terrorized by a nighttime predator. The descriptions were pure Spring-Heeled Jack, a shadowy figure in tight black clothing and a mask, scaling walls and, crucially, allegedly leaping across rooftops with supernatural agility. Some terrified locals even claimed he had springs on his shoes. I was travelling through the affected villages for work at the time, and the atmosphere was pure hysteria. Whole communities stopped sleeping. Men formed armed vigilante mobs with machetes, and innocent outsiders were brutally attacked. By September 2011, after riots and arrests, the Grease Devil just vanished back into the shadows. Evelyn, this is so interesting, isn't it? If this is something created by humans, why do we think such a similar figure keeps recurring in places all over the world?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's such an odd description. It also reminded me of something called the Monkey Man of Delhi. This is something that caused a brief panic back in May of 2001, where a creature that was described to be around 4 feet tall, it had metal claws, a metal helmet, glowing red eyes, and 3 buttons on its chest. So lots of similar features to Spring-Heeled Jack, but on a much smaller scale. And people were freaking out about it. It was this, mass panic, like this monster was terrorizing people. And I'm not sure I can explain that unless it's either a type of mass hysteria or it's something supernatural.
Uncanny Community, what do you think? Absolutely chilling, isn't it? That idea that something like Spring-Heeled Jack could really be out there, something that we can't explain or understand, feeding off our emotions. So to stop us all having a sleepless night, I will give the final word on this case for now to Dee. Dee says, "Hi Danny, fellow skeptics and believers alike. One word, parkour. If you are not already familiar with parkour, Google it right now. Those death-defying jumps and leaps that people do in urban environments, leaping from building to building. Could Jack have been a particularly early adopter of this right back in Victorian times? Ciarán, you ever tried parkour?
No, I've remained firmly grounded as a skeptic.
Could it have been a Victorian precursor, an early adopter, Ciarán?
It could have been. There's a really strong possibility. The fact that there were acrobats in existence in the past, there were circus performers doing similar sort of things. We've got this term parkour as a modern contemporary term, but it's just a term to describe exactly what these individuals are doing, jumping from roof to roof. So yeah, it may be an early adopter.
All right, some great theories so far. I'm loving it, loving it, loving it. You can let us know what you think of them in the comments down below. Do you think anybody we've heard from has got close to cracking one of these cases? And don't forget to like, hype, and subscribe. Your support means such a huge amount to all of us here at Uncanny. Now, if Spring-Heeled Jack was weird, we are about to go one weirder. Case 5, the Sandown Clown, the scariest story of them all, Evelyn said. Set on the Isle of Wight, we heard how 2 children called Faye and Mark discovered a person, a creature, if you like. Here's how strange it was. Faye steps onto the bridge, and then a hand reaches up from the water. Bizarre and frightening enough in itself, but even worse, this is a blue, 3-fingered hand. It grabs the edge of the wooden bridge. Faye gasps, and it gets worse. The hand is followed by an arm, and then a figure heaves itself from the dark water. It is enormous, nearly 7 feet tall and grotesquely strange. On its head is a yellow pointed hat, antennae jutting from either side. Its face is a geometry lesson gone wrong. Triangular eyes, a square nose, unmoving yellow lips, and it has no neck at all. Its head seems fused directly to its shoulders. Evan, what the hell was All Colours Sam? We've got a particularly disturbing theory on this, haven't we?
We do. So this theory comes from Joanne in Milton Keynes, and she says, "I have had a chilling thought about what All Colours Sam could be. What if he was someone from all of our futures? A human, but after some kind of future disaster, some environmental or nuclear catastrophe that has meant that the human race disfigured or re-evolved into something different, and they have learnt to survive in a different way. That would make sense of him saying that he was a sort of ghost, that he was something out of time. This, to me, is more chilling than any supernatural or alien encounter."
Bloody hell, Joanne. You are not wrong. That has slightly blown my mind with its scariness. Why the hell did we read that out? Visions now of child morphing into some sort of post-apocalyptic creature with 3 blue fingers and a pointy head. Keep all of your theories coming in on this. All of our cases remain open investigations. We'll try and come back to them all. You can email me, uncanny@bbc.co.uk, or find me, Danny Robbins, on social media, or just get typing in those comments. We read them all. Maybe you are the person that can defrost one of these cold cases.
Secrets still remain.
Ciarán, you know what we need to talk about now? The Cock Lane Poltergeist, the most innuendo-laden episode of this series, because the ghost had quite a memorable nickname, didn't it? And it had quite a memorable effect on you as well. Shall we watch the outtakes from us recording this episode? Here we go. Ciarán, 2 words. Scratching Fanny. This is the headline across Georgian London. Scratching Fanny. What are we to make of this? Ciarán, big developments here. 2 words. Scratching Fanny. What are we to make of this? Scratching Fanny. What is... Scratching Fanny. What is going through your head right now? Ciarán, 2 words. Scratching Fanny. What are we to make of this?
Very little.
What is your experience of Scratching Fanny?
Rob's trying to embarrass poor Ciarán.
Don't worry, you weren't the only one struggling with this. The comments thread on this got quite saucy at times. But actually, some really interesting theories as well, trying to crack this 270-year-old haunting. Louis Odell sent one of my favourites, saying, perhaps the arsenic poisoning that Fanny potentially experienced came from the poor condition of the lodgings that William and Fanny were forced to live in. In Georgian England, arsenic poisoning could come from wallpaper, cosmetics, textiles, and more. We talked about potential arsenic wallpaper poisoning in the Bully Rectory case. Evelyn, Louis might be after Ciarán's job here. What do you make of that theory?
I mean, it's a solid theory. We always have to look at environmental causes. To give you a famous example of arsenic poisoning, the French Emperor Napoleon was poisoned by the wallpaper in the house that he was exiled to because it had arsenic in it. And this was around actually the same time of this case. So could that be what happened to Fanny? But even if it is, it doesn't explain the rest of the phenomena.
Okay, let's talk about another case. And one of the stories that generated the most chat this series was undoubtedly the South Shields poltergeist. That first big poltergeist story of the digital age, occurring in 2005 and 2006 in the coastal town of South Shields, close to Newcastle in the northeast of England. Marianne and her partner Mark and Marianne's son Robert were a family under siege. The bitch will die today. Marianne is so desperate for it to stop that she turns her own phone off. But then the landline rings. Marianne answers hesitantly. She is met with a flat, robotic voice, the kind that you get when somebody sends a text message to your landline by mistake. The bitch will die today. Bitch gonna get you. And then, at the very end, a different, almost childlike vibe. Okay, man. And you were very definitely split on this case between Team Skeptic and Team Believer. Some people feeling that the phenomena was incredibly convincing, other people feeling that there was a potential human hand behind it. Hula Beulah has a theory, Evelyn.
They do. So they said, I am thinking that the ghost wants the mum all to himself and will be trying to remove Robert and Mark.
I can't decide if that's a sweet idea or an incredibly creepy one.
I mean, probably a fairly creepy one, but I mean, it does attach a sense of agenda to the case, which was the whole point for us. Why is this happening and what does it want?
Lots of people wanted to talk about those creepy text messages that Marianne received on her phone. They seemed to come from Mark's phone.
Yeah, so people were wondering if someone could have just saved a new number in Marianne's phone and saved it under Mark's name instead. And that is possible.
Surely that would be found out quite quickly, wouldn't it?
Well, that's it. Surely you would find that quite quickly, but also they would have to know to text the house phone, because the phone, the battery was taken out, the SIM card was taken out, it was turned off on the table in front of them, and then the text went to the house phone, which, I mean, if it is somebody doing that, they would have to have a line of sight on them the entire time.
Ciarán, you've had quite a bit of time to think about this one now. How do you explain those text messages?
Yeah, well, I've been quite interested in the number of comments that have come through from people saying that it was quite easy back then to be able to sit and, at a computer and type in the number into a web browser and send messages. Not a very secure way of doing it, but it was possible back then. So it's possible that that's what's happening. The only thing about it was that Mark was sat with Marianne when those messages came through, so he wouldn't have been responsible if that was the approach.
This would be a third person then, somewhere remotely doing this.
And I think that's the thing to consider, which is quite worrying that you've got maybe somebody else involved in this particular case. But yeah, you're right. Somebody would have to be outside of the house actually sending these messages using this web browser method.
Really disturbing idea. And talking about communication as well, lots of people getting in touch about that suggestion that there was an entity called Sammy who was communicating with Mark and Marianne using that child's doodle board, the Etch-a-Sketch type thing. Rachel got in touch to say that she'd had a similar experience, actually. She says, I did a ghost hunt a few years back at the Haunted Museum in Stoke-on-Trent, and says, I asked how many spirits were in the room, no response. Later in the night, an Etch-a-Sketch in the corner of the room had the number 4 written on it. We watched the CCTV from the whole night. Nobody touched it. Shivers down my spine. Carly from St. Neots had a theory about those red marks that appeared on Mark's body. Remember, he'd thought they'd been caused by a potential supernatural entity in the house. We can see that picture of them again here. Carly says, whilst I am 100% team believer, I can't ignore the skeptic theory that jumped out at me when I heard about Mark's injuries, as it sounded and looked very similar to an autoimmune condition I used to suffer from. Red lines would appear on my skin and look uncannily like thick scratch marks. My doctor just said they were caused by stress and I had to wait until it passed. It was embarrassing as it looked like I'd been attacked. They happened during a time of great stress in my life, and it lasted a good few months before just stopping. Thanks so much, Carly. And Mark was certainly under a lot of stress there, wasn't he? Could that be what caused the marks, Evelyn? What do you make of that?
I mean, quite possibly, but it doesn't explain, say, the black apparition that Marianne and Mike saw, or lots of the other things that happened in the house. I think for us, we can always find one possible explanation for each individual event that happens, but it's much harder in the context of all of them happening together.
All right, look, we can't finish talking about this case without talking about that moment with the water bottle. Mike, the investigator, woke up, remember, to find his bottle seemingly balancing in an impossible position. We got that photograph that Mike took of it. And then, Ciarán, you would say this wasn't impossible at all, and you were determined to prove that it was easy to do. You weren't able to do it in the moment, but we set that challenge to everybody watching and listening to see if they could do it. And we were deluged with responses. Here are some of the finest examples. So many precariously balanced water bottles coming in. And we've got to give a special mention, and maybe even a Paul Hollywood-style paranormal handshake, to Anthony, who sent us this image of 3 perfectly balancing bottles and the caption 1-0 to Team Skeptic. It should be 3-0 to Team Skeptic. Evelyn, does this knock the bottle evidence on the head?
So I think for me, the experiment is only accurate if we know exactly what the bottle is, and exactly how much water is in it, and we recreate it on the same table conditions. Because the bottles are all different, the volumes of water are all different. Does it make it less impressive? Absolutely. But I think what the audience has proved is that it is possible if you try really hard. You know, people were attempting it again and again and again. Mike didn't try at all. He just put his bottle on the table, he fell asleep, and when he woke up, it was sitting like that. So unless you're saying he was sleep balancing it, then no, I don't think it totally rules it out.
Ciarán, one case we haven't talked about yet is case 6, the haunting of HMS Asp, a haunting at sea. And during that, you told us about an experience that you had on board a boat, the SS Great Britain in Bristol. You'd been on a ghost hunt there. You said it was the only time that you felt genuinely spooked. You were going down to the lower class accommodation. And you know what? You aren't alone. I got an email about this from Amy Womersley, and she said, it's so fascinating that Ciarán mentioned the SS Great Britain in Bristol. I went to look around there last month and I felt deeply unnerved going down to the same spot. I thought to myself, this has got to be haunted. And sure enough, when I Googled, one of the captains went missing on that ship, and apparently he is the guy that haunts it. So there you go. We got multiple witnesses now, you and Amy. Is this proof that you had a paranormal experience?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, it's quite a creepy area of the ship. For anybody that goes down there, a lot of the other kind of lower parts of SS Great Britain are quite luxurious. The fact that it's the lower class accommodation means the way they've set it up, everything is very cramped. There's lots of mannequins around. It's very dark and dingy. So I'm not surprised other people have had experiences, but I'm very grateful for Amy for sending that in.
There you go. You've got that kinship of being spooked on the SS Great Great Britain. You've got a couple of quick theories for us about Case 10, the great Amherst mystery, the story of Esther Cox.
Yes, two good skeptic theories that relate to that amazing moment where Esther seems to swell up and her hair stands on end. Richard Graves says, "Hi Danny, my partner is a nurse who suggested that Esther may have suffered ascites. This is a rapid, noticeable weight gain that gives pressure on the organs. I imagine that pressure might make you feel like you're dying, though the banging to make it disappear is still something I'm working on."
Yeah, that was a really odd moment, wasn't it? That loud bang that seems to make Esther deflate. Theory number 2.
Theory number 2, here we go. This is from John Charlesworth, and he says, "You reported that Esther's hair was standing on end, which stopped after 3 loud thunderclaps. I was on holiday in Greece many years ago, and one day we climbed up to a high-ruined castle as a storm was brewing. Nearing the top, I could see tourists ahead of us giggling and pointing at each other. Everyone's hair was standing up. Somewhere in the back of my memory, I recall that this was due to the static in the air just before a likely lightning strike. I warned everyone around me and we ran for cover. Then an almighty storm began. The fact that in Esther's case, this incident ended with 3 thunderclaps is hardly surprising. At that moment, the static would have been discharged and the phenomenon would cease."
Really interesting one. Again, so many brilliant theories coming in on this case. The standout moment of that one, the moment I will remember, and I think one of the most memorable images across the whole series, Evelyn, is lighted matches seemingly appearing in the middle of nowhere and falling from the air.
Yeah, lots of them too, not just one or two, but, dozens of them, to the point where, one of the investigators is sitting there basically asking for a lit match on command whilst he's smoking. It's incredible because where does that come from? And in this old house, which would have rafters, and someone would have to be up in the rafters with a matchbook, scuttling around in any room they went to, striking a match and then dropping it down, and it would have to not extinguish as it is dropped as well. Just a really odd moment in a case.
Okay, thanks. Still lots and lots of emails and messages coming in on Borley Rectory. We did that double episode of that the last couple of episodes. We're still processing all that information. We'll update on that in a future episode. Evelyn, one of the most moving cases this series, I think, was the one that Ciarán picked out as his favourite, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO case. And so difficult, I think, for anybody to come out and talk about these kind of experiences, hauntings or UFOs. In this one, it was particularly difficult, I think, the stigma around them and their experiences. What would be your advice to anybody who's watching this now and has a strange experience, like a UFO or a ghost? What would you say?
So I think, first of all, it's about recording the information, not only because it helps us and it helps other people investigate it or look at it, but also because it's good for your brain. When you experience something that's potentially traumatic or frightening, the memory can become distorted. And the more you think about it, the more the memory shifts, the more confused you can become. You can start to misremember details. If you write it down or you're able to record it, even if it's as simple as making a voice note on your phone or writing something down in the moment, but it also helps you remember that it was real, that it really did happen to you. And then you can also check that moment against other information. So in a UFO case, you could check against satellites in the area, you could check against meteor showers, environmental phenomena, having an exact direction of what you saw in the sky, exactly what was in that sky that night, will help you dispel whether or not it is a UFO or it was something else, whether it was something explainable. And so hopefully that brings you some sense of comfort. But for us, it's always that no matter how silly it feels, or no matter how you feel like, oh, well, it was nothing, or I'll just not speak to anyone about it, it's too weird, record it and write it down. You can verify it, and then you can potentially speak to other people and find out if someone else saw the same thing. And just trust that either it is something natural or you're not crazy.
And of course, the other thing that you could do is contact us here at Uncanny, because we are currently plotting our next Uncanny series. Real life, potentially paranormal encounters told by the people who experienced them. Brand new cases coming at you later this year, and you could be one of those episodes. Get in touch. Email me on uncanny@bbc.co.uk.
Secrets still remain.
Look, thank you so much to both of you. I've loved digging into these cold cases with you both. It's really different to what we do normally. We're normally speaking to people who've had a experience themselves. This time round, we've been diving back, maybe as far back as Georgian times, looking at these cases. But we've learnt a lot, I think.
Yeah, we definitely have. I've certainly come across a couple of cases I've never really looked at before, and we found out some weird facts and history along the way, and hopefully the viewers at home have also found out some weird things, from creepy clowns to Scratching Fanny.
So true. Everything that we have learned looking at these cases, Ciarán, it helps us as we look at modern day cases.
Yes, absolutely. I think the process of looking back at some of these cases and learning about the investigations that were conducted at the time and learning about the witnesses and how they coped with the phenomena that they were experiencing is helping us understand modern cases, but also what we have done as a three has helped us. We've learnt things as part of this series and learnt things about how you can investigate some of these cold cases. So, long may it continue.
Absolutely. It's always fascinating to get your thoughts. And I love the fact that we have such different conflicting viewpoints and still be friends and get on. If only the world could be more like that. Thank you also to all of you for sharing your time with us and for being so fun and interactive, sending us all these brilliant questions and theories. Absolutely always really revel in that bit of Uncanny. For the final time this series, why not like, hype and subscribe as well to the video. Share the shivers. And also, if you do that, you will be one of the first to know when new content drops on the channel. And it won't be long, because we are actually back next week with a run of 3 Uncanny summer specials. We kick off with a live episode recorded at the Hay on Wye Festival. It's become a real Uncanny tradition now. We've got some spine-chilling, brand new Uncanny stories, new witnesses, and plenty to spook you the hell out. We also have an Uncanny Cold Cases summer special coming at you about the Enfield Poltergeist, one of the biggest hauntings ever in the history of the world. We'll be speaking to one of the witnesses from that case, and we've got a brand new Uncanny episode too, a completely new case that is bloody chilling. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you back here in a week's time. In the meantime, sleep well. Do you want to do it?
Don't have nightmares.
See you soon. Stop, don't go anywhere, because if you enjoyed watching this series of Uncanny Cold Cases and you are new to the Uncanny verse, I just wanted to remind you that over on BBC Sounds there is a whole world of spooky podcast fun waiting for you right now. You could listen to the original cold case that brought Ciarán, me and Evelyn together, the Battersea Poltergeist, this amazing real life story set in the 1950s in London with incredible phenomena. Go and have a listen. Also, The Witch Farm, another real life case told across a whole series. We're making a TV drama of it right now. Go back and listen to the podcast, find out how it all began. And of course, multiple series of Uncanny, the podcast. So many stories, from poltergeists to premonitions to UFOs, cryptids, the works. We've got Christmas specials, summer specials. I'm recording one right now. It's one beside the seaside right now. But look, if you enjoy the world of Uncanny, just so much to explore, so much to get your teeth into. And we will be back here on YouTube very soon to scare you even more. I'll see you soon. Get listening.
Secrets still